Hello, I am Argonbalt. You might say you have heard my voice many times already, but this is the most direct. More specifically, I am the head of the 15th triumvirate of my people. My full name can be translated to Anun Meduinid Argonbalt. You have heard as well the voice of my two predecessors, Neder Gwing Alogos Argonbalt, Ar Alogos Bal Argonbalt, head of the 14th and 13th triumvirates of this, the last age of my home. It is my duty to tell you that this world is ending. The world is being unmade. In its lowest depths, a nothing leaks into the foundations of this place. At the highest, the world turns to fine white ash. The trees and fields die away. The fish and beast grow weak and fade from this land. But you do not know this land. I could tell you stories of heroes, stories of tragedy, of triumph, but it would all be lost, for it would fall without context. In some years' time, if I do my job well, if my successors do theirs, you will laugh in delight at our stories. You will weep at the tragedies that befell us. In a way, it makes me happy. This world will be long over and done with by then, changed completely. But isn't that the best place to start? At the end, and to show you the joys and wonder of my people and our stories here afterwards. I think that will be nice. You see, I am making this to record something of this time, to show you something of who I am, something of what I have gone through recently. You see, we have long known we were not going to stay here permanently. If there is one axis for my people, it is that of the devastation of change. Great suffering has befallen us time and time again, and with the times we changed and adapted to those catastrophes. So it was only natural, really, for my people to reach forward in time, begin to study the patterns of Earth and history, try first to anticipate, then predict our lives, our people's culture, what may happen. We saw that many changes would come, but most of all, we would eventually no longer live in these lands. It was simply a necessary step we had to take. You see, all human lives are born with great potential, but no actual. We exchange our potentiality for actuality until we die, and we are nothing but the actuality of the effects we have had on the world. In a way, civilizations are no different, simply on a larger scale. From the apple grows a green sprout. From a seed, we begin, and at the end we are towering trees. So it was for my people. We have amazing potential. From this moment we ready ourselves to enact huge forces, and changes. But something happened, something rather simple. Do you know the beauty of the number 9? The number 9 holds the highest potential. The hermit, he is the 9th. Within him, all of the earthly experiences have charged his energies. The satisfaction of 9 is the satisfaction of being the axis of potential. Tomorrow! The new world. All the possible futures fan out like tables, each filled with different resplendent food. And all of your past confidently sits behind you, your history and decisions, building up to this point. This is the axis of 9, of potential. But my people grew docile and ridden with sloth. We grew covetous of this axis, of this potential. Tomorrow, for sure, we would try our hardest, but tonight we bask in potential. 100 different possible yous, 100 different possible futures. And soon we grew afraid. We knew the times were coming to an end. We knew, so we grew to covet our fading melancholy of home. Do you even understand? Do you even know? The world had a similar time not so long ago, for you. But ours lasted centuries. Since the great catastrophe hurt us, we lived out, century after century, dreading this great change. Melancholically looking backwards, it flavored our people and our culture. It stained our outlook on the world. By the old predictions, we would leave this home and perhaps make a new one. Live to find a deeper happiness, make good on our potential, push the stars, heave the heavenly bodies, become as gods in power. But this would take effort. Much hard effort, hard work, and guts. And as my people lived, we made mistakes. We got hurt. We failed. And so the future dream of a new home no longer looked as attractive. We balanced the two against each other. An old home doomed to fade and vanish, and the potential for a new home, only possible with effort and work. And even then, it would not feel like this land, like our old place. It would be a new one. It was not really an expansion, it was at best a trade. So do you understand? We balanced them as options, and we clung to this land instead. Our roots grew stagnant, they grew deep and entwined us here. A new home would mean leaving behind the past, moving forward and letting go. And how could we? Of the feelings, of the memories of our happiest times. Like a lighthouse, they guided our actions into the future. It seems so easy, I must think, to you out there. But when your precious places, precious feelings have been robbed from you, when before your roots were torn out, when others selfishly destroyed our Shangri-La, our Xanadu, our Maharoba. Do you see? See how hard it is? It seems so obvious, but to look back, feel the gold warm glow of a time you simply cannot return to. It curses you. It cursed my people. It curses me. How can one who has had such feelings taken from them willingly give up what remains? And so we lofted here, hung in the stillness of our fading lands, and I came to power. You must think me a tyrant, not a king, but so absolute. But for me and my kind it is not so. You see, we are chosen. We bear a special fate. To guide and protect our people, we hold the lives of so many in our hands. And when fate blows cold, we feel those countless lives cast away. It breaks my heart. So instead, my people focused on our projects. Vast in scope, ambitious. This would be it. We would complete these projects and then feel at peace, ready to move on surely. Only it was not so. There is no cue. We felt no sign. We waited and hid here, and the projects grew in scope. You've seen some of them. It was through them that we reached out, and through them that you have found me and my people. But even as we completed them, there was still no sign. When to go? When to leave? Nothing. The future simply continued. The 9 became 10. History never ended. I succeeded my predecessors, and then suddenly, it occurred. As I focused on these projects with all my might, it began. My obsession grew. Every day I worked at them. Every day focused on them. Any time away from them was time I thought of how to complete them even better. But then one day, my heart beat hard for no reason. I grew ill, could not sleep. What was it? Our finest doctors treated and tended to me, and they came back with the best and worst news. Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong. Not in my heart, or my lungs, or my stomach, or my blood. I was fine. But then, what had happened? It felt so strange. In a way, it was like forgetting how to live. Everything lost focus. How much time to spend relaxing? How much working? What was it we lived for? What was it I lived for? Our lives grew so convenient in these final times. We have food come to us, things come to us. We live isolated in our homes. Life is convenient but empty, devoid of meaning and hollow. If the truest happiness of life is the small contentedness of the feeling of home, then why was that robbed from me? I chased answers like spirits. My flame of life grew cold. I found nothing. They attacked. The forces of the eye. those who worship destruction, those who seek the release from the tension of life in death. I hate them! I hate them so very much. You see, we rulers are cursed with a special curse. When it began and how are mysterious, but in essence we, who bear the name of Argonbalt, are doomed to oblivion on death. No afterlife awaits us. For the great powers we receive, we are charged with doing our all to make this our only life, the only heaven we will know. And my life I grew to dread. It is said that those who envision things before they happen too richly rob themselves the satisfaction of achieving them. Of this my lineage is guilty, as am I. I grew to savor the possibility of being over the actuality of ever doing. In the face of my mortality, I grew to dread my own life, the hardships I had to endure and push on others. From fear of death, I could barely live, accept this burden of my one and only existence. And now for me, it all seemed wrong. I would live, leave this place, and perhaps die before a new could be found, cursed like Moses, merely to guide, never to happily exist. And then to take my people, them of the river Ar, the Argonai, the Argorim, the Argonbaltic, beyond. Do you understand my hesitation to do what we have known was needed for so long? Not all will make it. Many will be left behind, out of choice, or simply because we cannot carry our whole past with us. They will vanish into the endless ocean of time behind us. I visited a family along one of the main roads of this land. The young girl there, not even 7 summers old, cried in sadness, for she had found a horse of their farm, old and died that day. I comforted her as best as I could, but all I could think was this not the very essence of humanity? Larger apes holding smaller apes, comforting them against the vast nothing of the end of life. And how many like her, left behind, all left behind? Do you understand my hesitation now? Life seemed like a cruel son of mourning to me. If you should sleep peacefully or rage and stay awake, running from the dark thoughts that confronted you there, either way death dawns as the sun, inevitable. And you see, we kings of old, rulers now, are blessed with another trait. In our mind's eye, we are powerful in concept and imagining. It lets us envision that which is not, but could be. Plan great projects, amazing works. But in my darkest hour, it turned against me. I was betrayed by my mind's eye. For you see, I long thought of death like a door, present everywhere and nowhere. A door we can leave through at any time. But in the depths of my turmoil, the door became a wall, bearing down, trapped between the walls, crushing me. It did not matter if I ran outside, if I was flying high above, or in any of the rooms of my palace, the wall could come. I hated it. For the first time in my life, claustrophobia overcame me. I panicked. And worst of all, past collapse syndrome. As people and as a culture, we had oriented for so long, thinking of history as a kind of endless tower, a linear progression, a vast topography of mountains stretching behind us. The future lay ahead, the golden time of memory, our paradise stretching further and further away, down a hallway of endless doors, growing ever longer year by year. But then all of a sudden the past collapsed, history collapsed. Just like that, I suddenly felt connected to all times, all periods, but everything felt wrong. I taped over the experiences of my youth, and in doing so, split in two. Suddenly, I was no longer whole. There was a past me, one who had lived, experienced the world, felt distances in time, but who was now locked behind a glass wall. And there was a present me, alive, able to do anything, present in the future, with all possibility at my feet. but with none of the emotional guidance, with none of the direction. Like a plane flying through a cloud bank, all my readouts were fine, but I felt so lost. Suddenly, with my emotional and conceptual radar clouded, all life grew hazy. I felt as if there was a place called reality, but I could only feel it through a haze. Life felt as a dream, and in silent terror I wished I could scream out. It is simple, really. Imagine in your mind an orange, ripe and juicy, a taste. But why is it not real? It is the depth of information, the sensory call and response. A real orange is rich in information, rich in texture. It is a higher fidelity than what your imagined orange can attain. But now, what if you held a real orange, but the information did not fire? The emotional and rational data was clouded, locked, hazy and obscured. You were alive, in real life, but it felt like a dream. Because just like in a dream, where all you can muster is what you can imagine, the sensory density of information from reality has been decreased, dropped down. Suddenly, once certain things became obscured, once instinctual information now would not appear. Nations, stories, peoples, places, all felt unreal, abstract, arbitrary. I have healed somewhat now. That has been almost a year. But I still only have theories, ideas of what happened. Until I move forward, I cannot say what will or will not work. The past now feels locked off to me, not just in space, but even in emotion. It is like an unreachable plateau. I try to listen to the music of that time, but it feels like I am suffocating behind a wall of now. One by one, my heroes die. The stars I look to go out, and I feel, once again, alone. For so long we predicted that the special feeling, the warm feeling of home would fade, and one day leave us. Not even in memory stir our hearts. Perhaps that has simply occurred. I am banished to the present. And part of me thinks it really could be that simple. I had a beautiful time, but the world kept changing. And as the remnants of that beautiful time bit by bit slipped away, I felt less and less happy. Until we passed over some threshold, and entropically, I could simply no longer be happy. My warmth and fullness was like a wilting rose. It could only wither. Part of me wishes I had left before. Left while my homeland was spotless and pristine, and preserved in its beauty. A frozen jewel in my mind of this place at its height. But instead, I lingered as my people did, and watched it fade. And so, the past has left me behind. I cry out, "Do not leave me, please! You are all I ever had, all that ever brought me truest happiness." But I am left behind in the future. The past locks itself behind me. And in wake of this inevitable tragedy, destroying my soul, I sought a release. These projects, which I thought to use to escape, have instead collapsed back on me as well. The beautiful dreams I once had so far away. The harder I tried to hold on, the more they slipped through. It was as if I had seen a wondrous play that had felt so real, that it liberated me from the mundanity of reality. But in chasing it, trying to understand and hold tight to that feeling, it fell apart. I dissected my fantasies, and now I stood upon a stage. I owned the theater. I could weave costume, paint sets, write and act out the stories that had once enraptured me. But in doing so, I could not recapture the innocence of that fantasy. Could not escape. I stood on that stage and only felt the pressure of the demands placed on me. So now I turn to a place called future instead, and a violence grows within me. A jagged edge emerges. All throughout, while all other feelings changed, faded, confused me, and so on, one did not. Conquest, ambition, power. As my flame of life grew cold, it still gave heat. And now I know. Though healed, I know. My gills are gone, my lantern jaw lies discarded, but my wings are drying, and my eyes see very, very well. If my fire grows cold, I shall take the fire of others instead. Do you see it out there? Do you see it? A great dock, unlike any other, unlike any before. There is being built something, the great machine. And they in turn will build the dock and its structures, and then those machines and that dock will build it. The last ship to ever leave this land, the last and greatest ship of the land where once the river Ar flowed, where the demon of the lake gave Kishan his sword, where the wounded king rebuilt and dreamed himself from the world, where Gart descended the cliffs of the firmament, and the first star shone, where half of the Vintrish vanished, where the green grove grew tall in the great city of Argon before its fall, where the last apprentice learned the three-point strike, where when he died Volt was laid to rest, where we first took the lightning in our right hand, first took thunder in our left, and sounded the toll of storm, and felt those fresh, cool rains. From this place, from this land, that last ship will leave. I will helm it. If I fail, if I die, if I succeed, you will have to bear witness. For when you see my successor, you will at least, with this first effort, know the burden he carries.